My oh my, this is finger licking good. 1987 was quite a year, not only for the horror genre, but for cult movies. Two of them involving vampires were released in the same year. As you may know, The Lost Boys was released, but there was another film called Near Dark. And the horror genre was going really strong in the 80s, as well as a vampire genre, especially after the success of 1985's Fright Night. Catherine Bigelow directed Near Dark, and it was her directorial debut. She co-directed films, but this is the first film she directed on her own. And it was originally sought out to be a Western. Since the Western was a dying genre, they decided to merge it with a more popular genre of the time, with horror. And this isn't the first time that Westerns and horror genre have combined. However, you wouldn't see stuff in the likes of John Carpenter's Vampires or From Dusk Till Dawn until the next decade. So as far as like a modern Western horror film involving vampires, Near Dark was the first. And it's also one of the strange occurrences of having a film that doesn't refer to the creatures as vampires. The word vampires is not mentioned once in the film, even though these people have certain attributes and characteristics that are tied to vampires. So, what is Near Dark about? Near Dark stars Adrian Pasdar as Caleb Colton, Jenny Wright as May, Lance Henriksen as Jesse Hooker, Bill Paxton as Severin, Jeanette Goldstein as Diamondback, with Tim Thomerson as Lloyd Colton, and Joshua John Miller as Homer. That's the cast and crew of Near Dark, and Adrian Pasdar plays Caleb. He's the main protagonist of the story. He's a cowboy. This is a southern tale, and he meets this beautiful woman named May. He's out drinking with his friends, and he gets the courage to ask this woman out. He doesn't know she's a vampire. She's afraid of the sun coming up, and you really get a connection here, a romance starting, so it's believable. Anyway, upon driving her home, she bites him on the neck. He asks for a kiss, she bites him on the neck, and he starts attributing symptoms of vampirism. This gang of people take him and in their RV, and he's kidnapped practically. They almost kill him, but May confesses to the group that she turned Caleb. It is here where the story of Near Dark starts. And he is kind of similar to the Lost Boys in many ways. He joins this group, and he hasn't killed yet. He doesn't want to kill. May does most of the killing, and he drinks for May. But he doesn't want to kill, even though he's suffering from these symptoms. And this group of people are really bad. They're criminals, basically. And different ones were turned at different times. Lance Henriksen was turned around the Civil War. Severin, Bill Paxton's character, was turned around the Old West, 1800s. And you have this kid named Homer, and he's practically an old man in a child's body, much like Claudia in Interview with the Vampire. So you have this band of people, and it's actually most of the cast from Aliens. Catherine Bigelow knew James Cameron at the time. They weren't married quite yet. And upon James Cameron's recommendation, she looked at the cast of Aliens since that film just got done. They had that set there. She recommended those characters. And yeah, they have great chemistry, and it definitely has that familial bond here. And it's very different. It's much like the plot of The Lost Boys, but it's a little bit more mature and a bit more adult in the vein of, again, John Carpenter's Vampires and From Dusk Till Dawn. I like this. If you took the vampire horror element out of it, it would be a good Western. But the horror elements are done fantastic. It's not like in your generic vampire way either. They're more like cannibals that just have like vampire attributes. Lance Henriksen actually lost weight to appear very bone-like and just kind of like long and just frail, but he's very menacing. The acting's really good here. Jenny Goldstein does a fantastic job. You may recognize her from Terminator. And speaking of Terminator and Aliens, the director of photography, the cinematographer here, also did the cinematography for Terminator and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And you can tell, especially when it's the bar scenes and the 18-wheeler scene towards the end of the film. Above all, Near Dark is a fantastic film because you have Caleb not wanting to kill, but he goes around the road with this group of vampires, and these people are just brutal. They basically pillage and kill anything in their path. And he ultimately has to show that he's loyal to them, which he does in some way. They have to fight off authorities, different obstacles. When Caleb's family comes into play, that's when it gets complicated, and he must choose between his family or the dark underworld of the vampires. And that's when it gets very interesting. And I like that. You get to see Caleb's father try to look for him. You don't get to see that in other incarnations or other stories that involve vampires or missing children. And that definitely comes into play here for all the characters, especially in the third act. Catherine Bigelow's direction is fantastic. For this being her directorial debut, she shows her talent, but you can see that there's a great filmmaker here with her later works like Zero Dark 30, Hurt Locker, Point Break. You definitely see that Catherine Bigelow here, and it's fantastic. Again, with that and James Cameron cinematographer there, it definitely has that vibe. This film kind of got overshadowed by The Lost Boys, but ever since the release of VHS and its DVD in the early millennium, it's become a cult classic. And I say it makes the final cut. This is a very different type of horror film. This is a horror film that blended the Western and horror genre much before any other films or television did at the time. And you could say it probably had a lot of influence on Quentin Tarantino when he wrote From Dusk Till Dawn. Besides Lance Henriksen, you have the late great Bill Paxton. Oh my god, is he sadistic in this movie. He is ruthless and unforgiving. Oh my gosh. I mean, you have that KFC line of finger licking good, and then he's just like, is this the biggest piece of shit kicker bar I've ever been to? I don't know, I'm paraphrasing, but like, you get it. He's just a loose cannon. This is the Old West for him still. And some of the effects are kind of really strong and just disturbing. Others aren't done so well, but like when vampires die or get affected, you feel it. They burn in the sunlight. This isn't your Twilight vampires. No, this is like the anti-Twilight, and I love it for that. And it's not only a well-done horror film, it's a well-done film, period. And if I had to give Near Dark a score, I would give it a 3.8 out of 5. It is a really good movie. It's not the best vampire movie ever, but it's definitely one of the better ones. And if you like later on movies like Vampires or From Dusk Till Dawn, you'll definitely love Near Dark. It's definitely the predecessor to those two films. And the southern vampire vibe of it is just amazing. And also it has elements similar to The Lost Boys with Caleb's character meeting a beautiful woman, joining a gang of vampires, and ultimately choosing which side he wants to be on. And they do some crazy stuff with getting rid of vampirism in this that I never really thought of before. It's more like blood poisoning than it is like an ability. So that's very interesting. They also do some things with the sunlight of them using duct tape and black paint, done very early compared to later films such as Underworld Evolution. But it definitely is a well-done movie, and if you're a fan of vampires, the horror genre, or Catherine Bigelow's work, Bill Paxton's work, you'll definitely love this. It has that 80s Terminator 1 vibe to it, with a bit of like the southern vampire element and Lost Boys, and just everything you love about vampires. Also, Tangerine Dream does the score to this. Some tracks sound a bit dated, others sound really, really good in the way of like early John Carpenter films. I love it. Tangerine Dream did the score to Risky Business and Legend. They also do the score to this, and it's one of the better scores out there, as many other artists did movie scores back then, like Toto or Queen. Near Dark is a near-perfect film, and I love it. As a vampire fan, it definitely is a hidden gem, if not a movie that definitely makes the final cut. Anyway, that is my review of Near Dark. If you haven't seen Near Dark and you're a fan of vampires and Catherine Bigelow, definitely check it out. If you have seen Near Dark, let me know in the comments below, what did you think of the film? If you like this video, click the like button, comment, and subscribe for more videos.